got to the top of this rise, the lions were right there. And I mean, like, when we got to the top, there was probably 15 meters between us and two very angry lionesses. It felt much longer than what it actually was. But these lionesses came running at us, and the one stopped, just skidded as she stopped. She charged and stopped. She was like, "Hello, I'm gonna go again." And she comes charging again, taking turns, just charging closer. And I'm screaming at them. My tracker is like, clapping his hands and screaming at them. And the final charge.
Hello and welcome back to another episode from Photopian Shots podcast. So today we have a very special guest. As little kids, we used to watch Lion King, National Geographic documentaries, and the Jungle Book movie. However, our guest used to live into these events with his daily life as a kid. We have a very talented photographer who made a very deep connection with the wild and with the animals in the wild. Today, we have no one other than the great Marlon Du Toit, the Sony Alpha Ambassador from South Africa, wildlife photographer, and tour guide. Marlon, thank you so much for joining us today in the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity as well. And it's a very gracious introduction, and truly humbled. Thank you for that. This is long overdue.
Thank you, Marlon. So, Marlon, tell us more about your childhood and what made you love photography and specifically the wildlife photography.
Yeah, like I definitely grew up in the environment. If you know South Africa, tucked away in the most northeastern corner of our country, is a small little town called Palaborva or Palabora, and many people in South Africa don't really know the town. They've never been. They just know it's the hottest town in the country, or one of the hottest towns. But what makes it quite unique is the fact that it's on the border of Kruger National Park. So for those who know of Kruger National Park, it's one of the most historic national parks in the world. It's one of the largest national parks in the world, and home to incredible wildlife. And so I grew up next to the park and pretty much in the park. And my dad had a big love for wildlife, and he actually owned his own safari company as well, which was great because I could be exposed to wildlife literally before I could walk. It's just a part of my DNA and my nature. And he also had a great love for photography. And so growing up, I always had a camera in my hand, always had one of his cameras, and spending just countless days in Kruger, almost every weekend, and sometimes sneakily, as a youngster, he came and fetched me early for school, and or early from school, and you'd sneak into the park. And yeah, that was my childhood, growing up in a small little town. In the town itself, you won't believe it, but we have a lot of wildlife in that town. So, if you had orange trees or fruiting trees in your garden, the baboons or the monkeys would come and raid your garden. If you left your bins outside, you might find hyenas rummaging through them. At least 2 or 3 times a week, you hear lions calling from Kruger. Sometimes they would break through. Like, we had our neighbor wake up one morning. He worked on the mines, and in order to do that job, you got to get up early. So they hit the mines at 4 in the morning as the shift changes. And then one morning he walked up to his gate, opened his gate, and as he touched his gate, he had a pride of lions on the other side of his gate. They frequently came into the town itself. So a wild little town, a lot of interaction with animals. And yeah, that set the stage pretty much for my life as I have it now. Just a deep, deep passion for wildlife, and especially for photography.
So, as you started photography, what challenges did you face in the beginning?
Um, I think the biggest challenge for so many wildlife photographers is location or access. When you start out as a wildlife photographer, from my side included, living in Palabora, you can go into the national park, but eventually it's the same road, the same kind of scenery, the same waterholes. Like if you were to drive Yellowstone, if you were to do Yellowstone for 20 years, day after day, weekend after weekend, it's great, and it's an amazing place. And the same goes for Kruger, but eventually for a lot of photographers, you tend to, you want to be inspired by new place and new destination. I think for a lot of photographers, and me at that time included, was just access and different areas, and being inspired by different animals, scenery. I was fortunate that I took a job as a field guide or a game ranger, which basically means you work as a lodge-based guide. So for those who've traveled on safari, you get to stay at lodges or safari camps. And I would have been the guide who would host you for an extended stay, however long you came to stay for. And what was really good about that is I got to spend 4, 5, 6, 8 hours a day on game drive looking for wildlife. And that really took my photography from just, very little access or just a small, limited amount of time to 10 hours a day with leopards, lions, lion cubs, leopard cubs, hunting, just incredible, diversity of wildlife. And that solved the challenge for me, or solved the challenge for me. But I think so many photographers still today, it could be budget, it could be just, leave days, but you see all the amazing work going on online, and especially now with social media, such a variety of photography out there. And I think it must be frustrating to a point that it's difficult to share in that, or to get out there yourself. But yeah, that it was a challenge. Unfortunately, it became unchallenged for me.
So, what advice you wish someone would have given you when you started photography?
um, it's a, yeah, I mean, it's a good question as well. Um, I think maybe as a younger photographer, I'm trying to think, way back now, if I'd paid more attention to the technical, I think, for me, when I first started photography, I just picked it up and I started shooting. I'm talking about when I started really taking an interest in it, maybe 2008, 2009. Yeah, I look back at some of I don't know if you often do this, but you go back to some of your old photographs and you think like, man, if only I had a better camera, or if only I knew, like, don't shoot in automatic, or, whatever the case is. But
If only I knew this setting, or how to use this thing, or how
yes,
to do this and that. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Because, photography, as you well know, especially wildlife photography, you don't get second chances very easily. If something amazing happens, it's often a once in a lifetime experience, right? And I've had a lot of those. As a guide, you can imagine, for just day after day, 8 hours a day in the field, you get to see some pretty amazing stuff. And I just wish back then I had a solid, not necessarily what I know today, but just maybe a better foundation. And I think for any photographers listening, you can have. I'm a firm believer that good gear and good hands will produce amazing stuff. Like I like the latest gear, the latest tech. I embrace it. I love it. I think it's incredible where things are going. But if you're listening and you're starting out, the better you are as a photographer, you can definitely make entry level gear do amazing stuff. Don't let it be the other way around. Don't let it limit you. Improve yourself. And if you look at a platform like YouTube, my goodness, the amount of stuff that you can learn off YouTube alone, just free, is incredible. So, you have no excuse to better yourself as a photographer, to understand at least the basics. And you'll find when you go into the field, it's just memory, and you get up and you get amazing photographs. So Marlon 12 years ago would have been, make yourself a better photographer.
So, Marlon, until today, what do you consider your greatest achievement on a photography level and on a personal level?
Ooh, a personal level, as in still with photography, or just in general in life?
In life, like in life.
In life, wow. Meeting my wife and my kids. It sounds, she's probably listening, which is a good thing. But just personally, I love my family. Um, I I get to travel a lot, and it's a massive blessing. Don't misunderstand me. Before COVID, I would spend 160 or 180 days of the year out on safari. But there is a sacrifice to that, which is family, family time with your kids, time with your wife. And COVID has been very challenging, make no mistake, and I think we'll touch on it a bit later. But it's also had tremendous blessing in the sense that I've been home for the more than a year, and my daughter is turning 6 soon, and my son is turning 3. But I've been there for half of his life, watching him, learning, like learning from him, teaching him, seeing him grow, and especially, I miss those stages with my daughter, and that's been a massive blessing. So for me, I think family, they motivate me to be a better person. uh, with kids, you have kids, I'm sure you'll understand. It inspires me to work harder. I want to be an example for them. I want to be a role model, and in everything from fitness to health to my business, everything. I just want to be as good as I can. So yeah, family, my kids, my wife, like that's my life right there. And photography wise, it's a I've never entered. Once or twice I've entered, competitions or try to get my work out there, but I'm not a big one on awards. Or for me, I've had a few guests, who've won pretty big awards, with safaris where I've been the host, a big Nature's Best and some Nat Geo competitions, and which is great. For me, that's really rewarding. I'm a safari guide, and I take people into the field, and I often just feel if I have 5 guests with me and we all photograph a sighting, and there's a good chance that I might get better shots than them. And it just feels a little bit demotivating for people to travel with me, knowing I'm also going to enter that competition and possibly win. It's nice for them to come and I can teach them, have them get the shot, and then let them win. Like that for me, that's amazing. Um, but I think a big achievement, I've done the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. That was pretty amazing. That was an incredible experience, just to have that level of exposure. And yeah, so that for me was a pretty cool one. And just I think just where I am today, I'm fortunate to be able to travel the world to enjoy just life and seeing nature. That for me it's such a big privilege. Working with amazing brands, so many photographers want to be sponsored, want to be a sponsored photographer. I think, the relationship with Sony has been really incredible. I've learned a lot. It's not as simple as what you think. You don't just, hey, Marlon, here's camera gear, and go and be amazing. It's not as uncomplicated as that. There's responsibility, but working with brands like Sony and Panerai, like that's been dreams come true. So yeah, not one single standout achievement, but I think, professionally, just trying to be as good as I can and be an example, and spread amazing animal stories so people can love nature more.
Well, I guess the thing that's most common, and I heard from other couple of photographers, is family. Like appreciating
Yeah,
family, appreciating time with the family. This is one of the most common things that everyone consider his biggest achievement in life.
yeah. I think it is. I think photographers in general are people that are, we love nature. We see nature interact with one another. We learn from them. We learn behavior, and there's no stronger behavior in nature than a mother or a family unit. A mother protecting her cubs, or a male lion protecting its pride. So that I look at that and I'm like, man, I'm the male lion of my pride. And it might sound silly, but you learn from these animals, and they are primal, but they're also very in touch with that basic instinct, which is to protect and to nurture and to raise and to see them through their life. And for me, that's a big thing. Be the lion. I try to grow a bit of a mane here, so it's like a male. I see you've got a good mane as well. So
So, speaking about the wildlife, most of the time you're there doing a safari in the jungle. So, how did engaging with nature shape you as a person and shape your photography style?
yeah, I mean, exactly that. Like I said earlier, I love learning from these animals. I think there's so much you can take from them. Looking at animals, if you look at wild dogs, a pack of wild dogs are strong as their weakest link, and they will take a great amount of time to look after a weak animal in the pack. They won't just leave it behind. They'll nurture it. They'll feed it. They'll make sure it keeps up. It's very seldom that they'll just abandon a dog. Be it an elder one or an injured dog. And it's great to see that. If I look at hyenas, so misunderstood. Visually, the first impact is perhaps the image that Lion King created for them, or a very negative sentiment. But if you get to know them better, you understand that they are magnificent animals, so in tune with themselves and the clan structure and the hierarchy, and mother and cubs. They'll suckle their cubs for over a year. Patient mothers just lie there, let the cubs suckle. But they won't suckle another hyena's cubs. Lionesses will co-suckle, but hyenas just the one. And there's something in there, just that fierce love for your own offspring. And yeah, so I love nature. I love learning from nature, and there's no better place to draw inspiration from. And I think especially now more than ever before. And I use the word a lot, but post COVID, I think so many of us um, we need to get into nature. There's no better place to restore energy, just that much needed inspiration to tackle whatever's coming towards us. That time in nature, if it's a week, if it's 2 days, if it's 10 days, man, there's no better time. My favorite time on a safari is. Have you done a safari before? Have you been to Africa?
Yeah, I've been to
Okay,
some small parks in Kenya, some small parks in Zambia, but
okay,
not the Masai Mara, for example. No, just small parks which is in Nairobi, that they have these couple of
yeah,
impalas, couple of lions, but just small
okay.
stuff, nothing major. Yeah.
The best time for me is when I wake up in the morning. I get up about an hour before my guests do, and I go sit next to the fire, and I can hear lions calling, I can hear jackals calling, the hyenas whooping, a leopard rasping away in the background. And for me, that time is just you just soak it in, and you get to like feel inspired. You're ready for the day, and that's what I miss most. And I try to introduce people when I do safaris, and it's not so much about just getting the photograph. I want people to have a holistic experience, to truly leave not only with amazing photos, but to leave with incredible memories and moments. It's such a shame to get home and I'm so disappointed. I didn't get that shot. I didn't get this shot. I didn't do that. At the end of the day, that's not really what it's about. You want to get home and yes, have amazing images, but you must be able to remember what the fire sounded like, that crackle of the fire, or what it was like to have a lion walk right past you. You must imagine and remember that thrill. So, for me, that's key. People need to get into nature and just re-experience it. It's of the utmost importance right now, I think.
I think like what you're saying is definitely correct, and like not only in wildlife, like it's a balance between immersing in the moment and living the moment,
Yeah,
and between capturing it. Everyone has his cell
yeah,
phone taking the photo
yeah,
or the shot for this outing, but they never remember what events or what jokes was said when I
yeah.
was gathering with these friends. Like
Absolutely, man. Like, I mean, I do this often. I do this for a living, and I see people arrive and they disappointed after the first couple of days. Maybe they didn't nail the shot. I spend extra time there because I understand that people. My job is, when I'm on safari, as a photographic safari guide, I get you the shot. Like, I want to put you in the best place, best moment, best time of day, best location, and put all the favors in your side to try and get that shot. But you're going to miss it sometimes, and the point of that is not to be angry at the lion or yourself or your camera. If you missed it, it's one of those things. Tomorrow's another day. But remember that moment. You were still there with the lion, like hunting. Yes, it missed, but it was still amazing to see. That was a Nat Geo moment, and you were in it. Don't take that for granted. I think if people get more of that, man, the world will be a better place. I think.
so, Marlon, looking into your photographs, I see that there are two aspects that are common: details and storytelling. So, how did you perfect these two to get your photography level to another different level?
I don't think it's necessarily a specific aspect that I focus on. I think it may have developed or gradually moved in that direction. I think a lot of my photography is storytelling, And I think a lot of that comes from my guiding background as a, first and foremost, I'm somebody that takes people into nature and engages with them in nature, showcases animals. I have to have a very strong understanding of animal behavior, knowing what they're going to do before they do it, not only for photography, but even as a guide. That was if I can preempt and get the vehicle in a better position, or make sure my guests have a good view of a hunt, or understand where hyenas are moving their den to, or when the elephants are going to drink water, what time of day. So many elements that come into play. And I think having a strong foundation in understanding animals, their movements, their habits, how they move, when are they going to snarl at one another, all of these things play into my photography, because I just, often look at social media today and what gets attention. And, there's trends that you tend to go through. There was a trend at a time, and I'm sure you'll know, when like high key photography was a thing. People were just overexposing like everything, and everything is white and black. And that's kind of it. And then there was a trend where there was a lot of, like black backgrounds blurred out. And now there's trends of, there's all these trends that come along. I know at the moment people love adding a lot of Photoshop elements in, and bringing in the side lights, and soft backgrounds, and desaturated colors. And there's all these trends, and I try to keep afloat and engaged in that, because you grow your following a lot better when you kind of play to the audience. But I think it's important to be true to who you are still, and not deviate too much. Like, find what you enjoy. And for me, I love photographing animal behavior, and I love telling a story. And I'm sure you'll be aware of this. You look at a photograph, and sometimes a photo is just flat. We all do this. We go onto social media and we just scroll, 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 scroll. And eventually maybe something catches your eye. But for the most part, there's a lot of just good photographs out there, but it's just not good enough. There has to be something. And the detail comes into it, because if you look at a lion, when a lion looks at you and the ears are facing forward, it means the lion is attentive. It's watching something, it's listening. But the moment one ear turns to the side, all of a sudden you lose that attention. Or the eyes, sometimes the eyes open just big enough to get a bit of a glisten in the eye, a bit of a sparkle. And just in that moment, it's a split second, but if you can capture that, it engages the audience. It tells a whole different story. Or the movement of a paw or a foot. There's so many small nuances that tell a story, or to bring a moment to life. And I think that's what I actively look for. That I'm very aware of that in my photography. I don't just post for the sake of it. I want to tell a story, and it's challenging. You're looking at it's not a three-dimensional image. You can't taste, you can't smell, you can't feel. They're looking at a very small computer screen, or a phone screen. So you have a small moment there to capture people's attention. And another thing that I love doing is trying to get it right in camera. And we spoil today. I mean, you'll very well know some of the camera. I'm using a Sony Alpha 1 now. That thing is like 20 to 30 frames per second, 50 megapixel resolution. And it's so easy to get caught up in, I'll crop in post processing. I'll just get the shot now and I'll crop it later. I'll be 20 frames a second. It's good. I'll look for it between 55,000 photos after my trip. And it's all good and well, you can do that. But I take great pleasure in camera, just trying to get it right. I still, trust me, I fire away and I get the shot, but it's nice to have my exposure set, to have my white balance set, to try and look for the moment, make sure it's sharp, make sure the composition is good. I don't like, if I'm not close enough, I'll put a teleconverter on. If I'm too far or too close, then I'll rather have the car back up a little bit. I don't like, I like to get it right in camera. I think that's part of the challenge that hopefully we don't lose as these cameras just get better and better. But for me, that story is everything. I don't know if you've been in a position, just dropping down 1 meter lower immediately like separates that animal from the background, and it connects with the viewer, and it just creates a whole different feel purely by going down 1 meter. You just tell such a bigger, greater story in doing so. So that's what I focus on, is making sure that I look for those small features that stand out, and just an image has to capture the audience attention. Something I love saying, maybe a little bit off topic, is these animals don't have voices, and what we do as photographers is we are their voices. Like, I'm a voice for the voiceless, And these animals, rhinos, elephants, lions, are under so much threat. My responsibility, photograph them as good as I can and try to tell their story. And hopefully I can capture an audience and make a difference, you know? That's what I'm meant to do.
So speaking about stories, and I know you have a special story about Scar, and you have
Yeah,
a tattoo about
I
it.
do.
Like, yeah.
There it is.
So can you tell us the story of Scar, the alpha male, and why do you have the tattoo for this specific male alpha male lion?
Ooh, that's a beautiful male. I'm so, he died a couple of months ago, and I believe he's about 14 years old or so, give or take, which is old for a male lion. Like they're not meant to get that old and still be with a pride. And the first time I saw Scar was in 2012 or 13. That's the first time I saw him out in the field, and he was in his absolute prime. Not pretty much when I took this photograph as well. The tattoo is a photo of him that I took, I think 2014, and he was just, I see a lot of lions, a lot of male lions, and I see a lot of animals, but everyone who tells you about Scar, everyone's like, oh, Scar is just this, beast, and he's just so much to him. And that's kind of what he was. He inspired a lot of people. He's the most famous lion during his time in Africa. And for me, it was just, he was always, there was just something different about him, other lions couldn't just approach him. He was always kind of off to the side of the pride, very aggressive. I only a few times saw him really grooming or interacting with other pride members. Lionesses would walk up and they would just like smack them, bah, and they'd love it. So I guess the bad boy in him got their attention. But he was just, he's a big male lion. He had a very big black mane, and that eye was just magnificent. And believe it or not, he was a very difficult lion to photograph, like really difficult, very elusive, evasive. So many times, like we would spend, you can imagine if you have guests in the Masai Mara and they with you there on a photographic safari, they want to see Scar. That's like one of the first requests. It's like, we'd like to see Scar, and then we'd like to see a migration crossing over the Mara River. Like he was top bucket list kind of stuff. And you'd get to him, and you'd spend 4 hours waiting for this male lion to just lift his head. And then eventually he might lift his head and look at you for like 3 or 4 seconds and then turn the other way, and gone he goes. And you're like, oh, Scott, come on, man. Dude, these people came from like all over the world. They just came to see you, and you gave them 3 seconds and he's gone. And yeah, so that happens. But he's a special lion, and yeah, I'm just so happy to have been able to photograph him and to be inspired by him.
So was the Lion King named after him, the character Scar, or the opposite?
The other way around, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He
Okay.
so I mean he would have been born, I think, in 2006,
Okay.
and just obviously aptly named because he had that damaged eye,
Yeah, in the
so the
eye.
right
Yeah.
eye. Yeah, so that's where it came from. And but he was a mean looking lion, an incredible animal.
So you're always in the wild. You are always among lions, among animals. So what is the most crazy moment you encountered, or what is the most scary moment you encountered while being in the wild with animals?
Oh, my wife's listening, so I'm not allowed to say.
I'm sure there are a couple that at least you
No,
can share.
I've had a few. I wish I could capture some of them on. There's actually a couple that I have on photograph. Some of my guests were able to photograph me in some of these precarious situations. But yeah, I remember once when we went tracking lions, and so this is pre my photographic guiding days when I was still a lodge-based guide, and we came across. Tracks of lionesses very close to the lodge. My tracker and I, Glass Marimani was his name, still worked for Singita at the time. And we had the tracks of these lions on the road, and we we're following on the road, just driving behind the tracks. And eventually the tracks left the road, and we decided, right, cool, we'll stop the car here And what is custom is that in South Africa on these game reserves, I don't know if you've seen, there's a tracker or a guy sitting on the hood of the car. Have you seen that before?
Yeah, yeah. I've
Yes.
seen that in a couple of short movies, like, or
Yes.
documentaries before. Yeah.
Yes. So that guy up in the front, each, like, I had a tracker and we'd work together. That, you're teamed up and you get to know one another and you work together so closely. But his biggest role is to spot animals. They have ridiculous eyesight, man. Like, they'll see a leopard at a half a kilometer away, and you need binoculars to see it. Their eyes are just so well trained, but then their speciality is tracking. Okay, so they sit up in the front so they can actually see the footprints crossing the road. And on this particular morning, the lionesses left the road. You could see by the tracks, it was fresh tracks. In other words, they'd walked there within the hour probably. And as we soon found out, they were not that far away. So what happens is I grab my rifle and a radio, and just for safety, and Lars and I would get off track for a little bit, establish where the tracks are going, so we have an idea of where these lines are walking. Glass would then, or my tracker would then carry on with the rifle and the radio. I go back to the car and I drive. And then you work as a team. He's on the ground behind the tracks. He's directing me the direction of the tracks, and we go driving and, trying to meet up ahead of him. And on this day, we had walked probably 100 yards, if even. It was up a little bit of a rise like this. And as we got to the top of this rise, the lions were right there. And I mean, like, when we got to the top, there was probably 15 meters between us and two very angry lionesses. And they did not even hesitate. They must have heard us coming. And the moment we stepped up on top of this rise, they came at us. And they were so irate. And I just remember it felt much longer than what it actually was. But these lionesses came running at us, and the one stopped, just skidded as she stopped. She charged and stopped. And the other one charged just a little bit past the one who had already stopped. And then the one who had already stopped saw this one passing her, and she was like, "Hello, I'm going to go again." And she comes charging again. And then this one sees this one charging past, and she's like, "I'll just keep coming." And eventually, so they're like making turns, just charging closer. And I'm screaming at them. My tracker is like, yeah, clapping his hands and screaming at them. And the final charge put stones in my boots, from where she stopped, like this. Just stones hit my legs and fell into my boots. That's how close she was when she finally stopped. And she stood there, it was probably 5 meters away. I had my rifle raised. It's like I said, I've never had to use it, fortunately, and also not on that day. My legs were not shaking yet, but it's a incredible feeling, like looking into the eyes of a very angry lioness 5 or 6 meters from you, and her tail is just doing this. And all you can do is stand your ground. If you turn around or you run, your tickets. And I just stood my ground and Glass did, and we were nice and calm. And she turned and she walked away and gave us an opportunity to go back. And it was in full view of the guests. So the guests were watching, and it was only by the time that we got to the car that, you start realizing what just happened, and, you need some sugar water or whiskey or something like that just to calm the nerves. And then another great encounter I had was with an elephant bull in Mana Pools. And it was just one of those miscalculated situations. And he ended up charging me almost 5 times. And every charge was closer and closer. And I'll share a photograph of this with you. One of the guests actually photographed me standing like this with my camera next to me, watching this elephant bull. And he was only a few meters away. And at that point, he gave his last charge, and he put his head down to come at me. And I picked my camera up and I swung it in his direction. And I was about to throw it at him, to be quite honest, because it was quite an intense encounter. And I swung it in his direction. And probably the movement I had a big 400 mil, so white lens, and probably the movement sent him back a bit and gave me an opportunity to back up to the car. But yeah, that was as a radical photograph. You'll enjoy it, and thanks to all everyone watching. It's
Wow.
yeah, those were a couple of good moments. I've had some good ones. The rest I'll
Wow.
tell you in person.
So, speaking back about photography, Marlon, there is this trend coming up with artificial intelligence software that helps in editing. So they add uh, the sun and the clouds and everything.
Yeah.
So how do you see this
Like
trend in
sky
photography?
replacement and that kind of stuff.
Exactly, exactly. So you create a photo out of nothing. So how do you
Yeah.
see this trend affecting the photography?
Oh, I mean, it is a good question. Like I said earlier, I think for me, I'm still a bit of a, I wouldn't say purist, but I, there's so much you can do to alter reality. I mean, today, if you look at I've really enjoyed my video editing and using Photoshop a bit more for different features. And I mean, it's endless. When you as the viewer look at a product, like it's difficult to say that's the original product. Like you say, you can replace the skies, the mood, change the whole tone, change the color, drop in a butterfly, like whatever it is that you want to do, you can do whatever you want. And if you do it well, which a lot of guys are, then the viewer would be none the wiser. And it's just like, oh, amazing photograph. You are like just incredible. And it's a fine line. I think, for those photographers, many of them will be honest about their process and how they got to the final product. Um, and yeah, it's like I said earlier, I embrace technology. And if I look at what's in the cameras today, animal eye tracking, it certainly has allowed me to take photographs that I couldn't do before, especially birds. Incredible ability to photograph birds. It's amazing. So I'm not one to judge. I'm using AI technology in the cameras. um, but yeah, I think if you are somebody who loves to play around with that, tell your audience, be honest, share, give them an opportunity to do the same, or just be honest about your process. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I don't know. What do you think? Where do you think this is going? Where do you think it's leading to? What's your thoughts on it? I'll be interested to hear.
Well, I was speaking with other guests, and they have the same opinion as you said, and I have the same opinion. If I'm using these softwares and I'm honest with the people, telling them I'm using this specific software that adds clouds or alters whatever, and I'm not speaking about Lightroom. We all use Lightroom or
Yeah,
Capture One to adjust
yeah,
the exposure, the white balance, blah blah blah, all these stuff. But I'm speaking about like adding a sun that was not there or
yes,
adding clouds
yeah,
that were not there. So if
yeah.
I'm honest and I'm saying that okay, this photograph was altered with this software, okay. But if I'm saying, hey, I captured this amazing moment while being in safari in Africa, and the reality is that day it was raining, it was gloomy, no.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think, yeah, like, otherwise, where do you draw the line? There is no line because you just completely step over it and you alter reality and you create something that wasn't there, to start off with. So yeah, I think part of the challenge is to try and get a photograph as good as you can instead of having a bad sky. Like, so much better when you finally do get that sky. It's so much more rewarding.
Yeah.
Or if there's a branch in the way, rather move your vehicle and get a shot without the branch instead of trying to fix it later. Those are the challenges for me, trying to get as close as I can. But I mean, there's definitely a lot of, and it's often those accounts or followings that do very well. The people who alter the photographs into like just a weird, different sense of reality, and people take to that very well. So it's tempting to just like throw it all under the bus and to join that. But like I said earlier, you gotta also, like, it's nice to develop something that you get known for, create, craft a style or something of that kind. I enjoy that. I think it's part of the challenge now. Otherwise, you just kind of get lost in the masses, and it's just another photographer who over edits his photos.
Yeah. Yeah. So, speaking about social media, Marlon, so there was this recent statement from the head of Instagram that the
Yeah.
platform is no more a photo sharing platform.
Yeah.
And all photographers were, so
Damn
what will we
it.
do? Where will we go? What will happen? So, what do you think about
Sending
that? What's
everybody into
your.
a state of panic.
Exactly,
Yeah. No,
exactly.
I mean, it's been, the writing's been on the wall for a very long time, to be honest. We've all seen the engagement drop down with photography. Um, and there's a few things I can think of. So, definitely, I mean, there's no doubt, if you look at the way cameras are going, you're not just buying a camera anymore. You're buying a very well-rounded camera system that's got resolution, it's got frame rate, and it's got like crazy video capabilities. All of the new cameras are coming out like that. So if you're going to buy a new camera, if you're going to invest in mirrorless, good chance your camera can take ridiculous video. And I think use it, embrace that. What's your end goal? Are you an established photographer? Do you focus on books? Video is not really your game. Are you trying to build a social media profile? For me, I understand very clearly what it is that I'm doing. I am a wildlife photographer. I'm an ambassador for brands, but I'm also a safari guide, and I have to make sure that I get business. What sells? Is it another leopard photograph, or is it the experience people visually see in video of a leopard next to the car? If people can see it in video, it makes them want to be there and they book a safari, hopefully. But that's kind of my goal. So I'm always going to mix my social media with video, because it's just how things have evolved and people react to that far better. But I still want to take great photographs because I show that I'm able to, and I understand what I'm doing, and I love photography. But I think it's very difficult to separate the two and to stay true to only photography. I think you're definitely going to take photographs, and also I've done so many. I've been in the field so many times. I have so many photos. I find I take very few photographs. Yeah, I'm not photographing every leopard. I'm not photographing seldom. I'm either with my guests or I'm taking video. So instead of taking another photo that I'm going to delete, I use the video and I take great videos, and it's great on social media. It does very well, but yeah, it's definitely changing that way. I think TikTok drives a lot of the video views. Instagram wants to compete with TikTok, and it's just forcing them to entertain the masses. And unfortunately, the masses are not made up of dedicated wildlife photographers. I wish it were, but yeah, definitely caters towards the video market. And do you enjoy? I mean, I really enjoy video, so I'm fortunate in that sense. But yeah, I'd suggest if you want to grow your following, get into video, man.
I
Good
love
thing to
video. I
do.
love video. Like when I do
Yeah.
a photo session, like I tend to just take behind the scenes or just do a small reel with some cinematic shots, slow mo.
Yeah.
Like it's just a 1 minute. Like I love video myself, but
Yeah.
I saw the panic among photographers. So
Yeah. And definitely, when that statement came, I still shared it onto my feed, and yeah, people just freaked out. Everyone was DMing me and like, what are we going to do? And, photography is doomed. And, it's a shame that there's no real, I mean, there are some photography platforms, but there's nothing that really, engages the mass market. And it's just Instagram, and it's the worst. Luckily, I started sharing the where you split an image across two screens. So you'll take an image in Photoshop. I just did it in Photoshop, chop it in half, and share across two screens. And I started doing that last year sometime, like mid halfway through last year, but it wasn't very well received. And I think one of the first guys to start doing that regularly was Paul Nicklin. And then I started taking to the trend again around November last year, and it started picking up. And now a lot of photographers are doing that way, which is great because it gives you the ability on Instagram to share, more of a landscape type images across two frames, and it just looks a bit better. And but yeah, I wish there was a way that we can, showcase our photography to a bigger audience. But at the moment, it's TikTok, and whether we like it or not, video is there to stay. And if you can incorporate your photographs into videos, even just if you want to get followers or traction, just take your photos and make a video of your photos. It does so well.
yeah,
And if you do it a little bit with, some good taste, then, you're well and away. So embrace.
yeah,
Yeah. That's the big thing.
yeah. So speaking again about the social media, as photographers, you have to be on the social media, be there, put your content, engage with the
Yeah.
followers, with the fans. But on the other side, there is this negative side of the social media with hateful posts or having anxiety from not having the right amount of likes, for example, or whatever the algorithm drives you to do. So how do you balance between being there to promote your work and not getting into the dark side of social media, especially if you need not to have the social media consuming your time if you have a family or a
Yeah.
hobby or whatever?
Yeah, man. It's. Have you watched The Social Dilemma?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak about it because I'm not promoting it, but yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
definitely watched
it's. I just bring it up because it's there's so much truth in that, and it's kind of what we knew, but it just really opens your eyes to everything really that goes on around you and what ends up on your phone. But I'm not perfect. I do end up scrolling, and TikTok's got that bad habit where you go on for a few minutes and an hour later you get off the phone and you're like, what just happened and why did I watch so many random videos? But I use it as a tool. So for me, it's very important. In the coming months, it'll be an extremely important tool for me, and I'll use it more and more and more with various channels. There'll be a big drive for me on YouTube and adding value added videos on YouTube, podcasts, starting my own podcast as well. So I really want to do stuff that adds value, and I do spend a lot of time on social media. For the most part, it's I would say probably um, you know I keep score. I don't know if you do that on your phone, but I try to keep tab on how long I spend on social media in a day, and I try not to do it too much. But I probably spend an hour and a bit on Instagram, which is my most used platform, and the bulk of that is answering comments, posting, looking at statistics. I genuinely don't scroll around too much. So I try not to. I'm very conscious about that. I have family. In the evenings, I try to put my phone away with my kids, with my family. I work a lot at night. This is probably my most productive time. It's 9 p.m. now, so between 9 and 11, I do a lot of
after
work,
kids are
answer a lot of
asleep.
emails. Yes. So yeah, I work from home, and so when the kids are asleep, that's when I work, and I often wake up early. So between 4 and 6 in the morning, I often get stuck in as well. But yeah, it's if you're not in today's world, if you're not fully aware of that side of social media, it will just consume you. And I see it so often. I mean, we know that sitting at tables and people are just on their phones instead of talking. For me, I don't want to take time from my family. I travel a lot. When I'm home, I want to be present, and work is work, and I'll do that side of it. But yeah, otherwise, man, it's like you said, it gets dark, and you can and there's so much happening at the moment, so many opinions and news, and you just get completely just consumed. It's like a black hole.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm in a positive state of mind. I always see the good things, and the last thing I want is to have this and that and that and that, and it's just too much, man. So I try to shut off from that. If I could take a break from social media, I would. I've never done that. I've just never taken a clean break, and that's something I will do. In the next 12 months, but I'd love to take a month or two and just completely shut off and just take a break from it. I think it'll be very healthy and something everybody should do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, like sorry, just it's our job, right? And same for you. Like we have to be on there. I had the conversation with my mom tonight, and you have to be on it. You don't have a choice. It's your work. It's not just sitting on your phone. And my wife is the same. She runs her business online. So I understand. It's your work. It's your income. You have to monitor and post and share and chat. But
yeah.
yeah, you got to. It's a fine line. You got to still manage it.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a fine line not to be consumed into this black hole. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah. So, Marlon, COVID, COVID and 2020. So, tell us, what did 2020 teach you as a human, and what did it teach you as a photographer?
Yeah. um as a photographer is like to just cherish every moment out there. I was fortunate, we myself and Andrew Beck, we another great photographer, wildlife photographer, check him out. We so lockdown in South Africa started late March, and we have a very close relationship with Sabi Sabi Private Game Reserve, and we were so fortunate to we struck just a good friendship with them. We've always been friends, but just a partnership where we went and created content for them. On their properties, and we got special permission, we got permits, so we could travel even during the most heaviest lockdown periods. Andrew and I were in the car, and we were onto the Sabi Sabi property. And we were creating content, legitimate content for them online. Safari camps were heavily hit. You can imagine, like the tourism and hospitality.
Travel is all affected. So
Yes. But, in my industry, safari camps that's our bread basket. I'm an operator. I need a safari camp and their property in order to take guests to take photos. So it's all a chain, right? No guest, no operator. The operator needs the camp. If the camp doesn't have staff, the camp feeds the staff. It's just like this vicious chain. And, so for us, if we could help with content and videos and feel good moments online, reminding people, nature's still there, nature's still going on. So, we were so fortunate. It was some of the best times of my life. I mean, Andrew and I could, during lockdown, go to some of these 5-star game reserves. The lodges completely shut down, and we just used one or two rooms and a fire pit. We had our own food. We brought our own food, and we were staying in these luxury 5-star lodges that would cost $2,000 a night. Just Andrew, no staff, no people, nobody waitering on us. And we just had the entire Sabi Sands Game Reserve to ourselves. And those moments I'll cherish forever. I'll never forget. We speak about it often. And it just made me appreciate, I promise you, when I go into the field now, I'm like, oh man, look at that impala. That is just beautiful. Impala, I love you. Like, oh, there's a bird. And it just, you just love, you don't take it for granted. I think so many of us, especially in the field that I'm in, people come and go, and it's, you just take it for granted because you're going to come again next month. And all of a sudden, we were all cut off. Everyone's sitting at home. International photographers couldn't travel. A year later, when they were traveling 200 days a year, now they're doing none. And I'm sure for them as well, getting back out, you just truly appreciate nature and that amazing effect it has on you. Um, so yeah, like that in that sense. But personally, I like I said earlier, for me, the biggest thing there's been challenges. A lot of people had some pretty big challenges, would be it mental or whatever it was, from the effect of lockdown and isolation and everything else. And I'm, fortunate on how I came through it. For me, the biggest thing was just trying to be in it for the long haul, taking care of myself, mentally, physically, just staying motivated, staying stimulated, and just family time. I focused so much energy. I knew it would only be for a time. Next year, probably all of us will be traveling again a lot. And so for me, this was a phase of my life that I could invest in my family, in my kids, and just make sure that I can appreciate and enjoy every moment at home. That was a big thing for me, man.
yeah, yeah. So Marlon, our podcast is called Photopian Shots, and Photopian is the
Yes.
Utopian shot. So let me ask you first, for Marlon, what are the three aspects that define a utopian shot?
Ooh. Is this like what would make a great shot? What would
Yes,
make
yes. If you see a shot of some photographer and you say, "Oh, this is a utopian shot," so
um I think for me, always a story. So just when I look at it, the first thing I look at it is it must make you ask a question. I think if you can get somebody, if your photograph can make somebody ask a question, it could be, what is the animal doing? Where is that? Wow, that's incredible. I wish I was there. Whatever it is, like I think that's the first thing, is to get somebody to stop and like beg a question of that person. Um, and I think something that really separates a lot of great photographers from just the good is their use of environment. Um, it's not easy to do a portrait, but like I mean, portraits. There's some great wildlife portrait photographers. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's more difficult to tastefully include the bigger environment, the bigger picture. It's not easy. Very often you get it wrong, and the animal gets lost in that space that it's within. But I think more than ever before, and it's something that I really enjoy doing, is bringing the environment into the photograph, because the animal, and especially now, environments are under so much threat, and it's very difficult for animals. If we lose the environment, we lose the animal. Like there's no other way. The animal can't. It's just how it works. And I think if we can display animals within their environments now, It's very difficult to do, but if you're good at it, you can do that and not only draw the person in, but just make it look beautiful within that environment. And that, that's key for me. And I think a lot of thing, lastly, that a lot of photographers get wrong is the use of color. That's the first thing I do when I process is I look at white balance and color, not color grading, but it's incredible the difference it makes to your photograph if you just focus on getting the colors, the tones, and the mood right. If you look at a videographer, the color grading they do afterwards is ridiculous. What it does to from the beginning to end, and it just immediately like that cinematic. I almost want to have my images should have like a cinematic feel to them, if that makes sense. Like just that incredible drama element to them. I love that in photography. I recently saw a photo. I don't know if you know of a photographer called Marcel van Oosten, a Dutch photographer, and he just recently did a photograph of a polar bear, one of the most like epic photos I've ever seen. Just a polar bear surrounded by ice. It was like in an ice cave or something, just like crazy. But I saw that photograph and I was like, my goodness! Like I commented, I shared it. I don't often repost other guys, but I was just so blown away by this moment. And the polar bear is small in the frame and it's just surrounded by this blue ice, but he just did it so well. Go and have a look at it. But moments like that just stop me, and it's what separates and you have to. Today there's so many photographers, everyone's got great gear, everybody has access. How do you stand out? And that's the key. That's why I love these podcasts, love what you do here, because it gives somebody listening the opportunity to think outside the box and try to figure out, how do I get my work to stand out? It's not easy. There's a lot of photographers out there.
Yeah, yeah. So, speaking about photographers, who was your most utopian photographer that inspired you when you started photography? And nowadays, who is that utopian photographer?
There, an image I always remembered. I don't know if you'll know this photograph. There's a photographer, a Nat Geo photographer called Chris Johns, and there's an image of his. You can go Google it. Chris Johns, lion on the dune, and it's an old image. I think it must have been taken in the 90s, of a male lion with the wind blowing through his mane on a dune. And I was fortunate enough. He was actually on a that image I just always remember that shot. I've always wanted to get a shot like that. Just this male lion with his head up and the wind blowing through his mane. And I met him once. I was on the Martha Stewart show, funny enough. And she's become a good friend since. But I was on a show, and Chris Johns was the main character on the show. It was for Earth Day. And I got to meet him and got to tell him in person, like, Chris, one of my favorite photographs ever, which was quite special. And so that was one of the photos that inspired me a lot. And then growing up in South Africa, there was great wildlife photographers, Daryl Balfour, Richard Du Toit. And nowadays I love one of my favorite photographers. He's become a good friend. It's a guy called Hannes Lochner. Really, really a good friend of mine now. And just inspired, I think, not just one photographer, but elements of their work. Charles Jung, David Yarrow, for just the incredible work that he's done and exposure he generates from his work. Nick Brandt, I love his way of just like isolating an image and an animal. There's more that I can mention, but I think I try to take elements from different photographers. There's not one photographer that's just like the be all and end all, but there's a lot of guys that do things well that I try to incorporate into my photography. But if there's one image way back that I remember, it's that image from Chris Johns, of the lion on the dune.
Yeah. So, speaking about images, Marlon, can you share with us a couple of your most utopian, remarkable shots of all time? I know all your shots are remarkable, of course, but
I think the one that gets probably the biggest reaction without fail is there's a photograph of a crocodile eating a zebra, and it's just like gory. I don't know if you've seen this photo before, but it's a crocodile with a entire zebra head in its mouth. I kid you not. And it's vivid, it's raw. Like you can see just a lot of detail on the zebra. And that photograph, whenever I share that, just, it goes off and people just kind of freak out over it. I think it's time to share it again because I haven't shared it in quite a while. So maybe it's coming up. But, that's definitely a standout image for me. There's another photograph that I really, really love, and it's a photo of Scar running. We were with them, and all of a sudden, the wind started coming up. They were right next to the car, him and another male lion. The wind started coming up. And all of a sudden, such a big gust of wind that it made the car move out of nowhere. And with it came rain, and the rain very almost instantly turned into hail. And then we had these lions running. I could hardly see them. My camera, the first 7 shots that I took were completely out of focus. Only the 8th one locked onto Scar as he was running. And in this shot it's like blue with all the rain. There's hail and there's wind, like there's branches flying up either side of him. And it's just this crazy cool photograph of him on the run with just like all these natural elements, which I just really love. And so that's another standout shot for me. And I have a wild dog photo that I really love, taken about 8 years ago, lying flat down on my tummy in Mana pools in a riverbed with this wild dog just staring. He was only about 3 meters away, nothing between us, looking straight into my camera. Yeah, so it's so difficult to choose one favorite photograph, but yeah, those certainly are a few that
I think also you forgot one of your most beautiful shots that you shared before is the leopard on the tree. Leopard, or yeah, it was on the tree and it was the Milky Way above it.
that's a pretty cool one. That is a good one. That was taken actually during lockdown with Andrew Beck and I in the Sabi Sands, and with a little makeshift monopod tied to the car so that it doesn't move, and slow exposure of the stars. That is a good one. I actually recently processed that into black and white, and it looks pretty cool. Very special moment. That's a good one. Thanks for reminding
Wow.
me of that one.
Well, as I told you, all your shots are remarkable. So if I keep that, like each one would have a story behind it. So yeah,
Oh, it's too kind. Thank you very much.
you're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
So Marlon, what are you looking forward to achieve in the remaining part of 2021?
Um, I've got a couple of trips coming up. I think for me, something I'm gonna likely double in is trying to get a shoot a pilot for a new TV series. I really want to expand and try and see if I can get onto TV or to pitch something to say Netflix or the sorts, and started negotiations and talks and those kind of things. So for me, I love photography. I love guiding. And I love, I want to create a big audience. I want to create a platform which I can use for good. It's not necessarily for fame or for. I really want to create when you have influence and when you have following, you have influence. You can make a difference. It's easier to do if you have 10 million people behind you than 500,000, because you can just have that bigger influence. It opens up doors that you didn't have before. And like I said, man, I grew up in Palabora. I grew up in nature. My intentions are sincere. I really want to do everything that I can to make sure that my kids will grow up to see the animals that I've got to see and my dad got to see. And the reality is, it's heading in the wrong way, heading in the wrong direction. The animals are not doing well. Rhinos, lions, elephants, they're not doing well. If it continues on the trend it is, 5 years from now, no more rhinos, man. It's that kind of a bad. It's dire situations here. So the more I can do now, the bigger my audience, the bigger my platform, the more influence I can have. And I really want to look at ways to do that, to bring what I do to the larger audience. And so for me, that's kind of the next step, is to try and get onto TV and see how that goes.
Well, you actually answered the coming question, because the coming question I was going to ask you, how can photography give back to the community? But you already answered that by doing you said you want to have an influence and you want to just make more awareness, like voice for the voiceless.
Yeah, man, that's and there's a lot that comes with it. Like the better you are, that's why I say don't shun technology, don't shun when things change and AI and techniques. Try it, have a go. You might not like it, maybe you do. But I think too often, if you're too much of a purist, or you're too much stuck in your ways, and that's another thing. It's easy for photographers to get stuck in their ways. That I don't like doing that. I like to do it this way. And the problem is, you're never going to fully embrace what's coming, because it's just going to be technology is just going to get better and better and better. Look at what mirrorless cameras can do. Look at what social media can do. I mean, I'm running, I don't know if you use it, but in Lightroom, the super resolution or enhanced feature. I mean, you can run old images taken on 10 megapixel cameras and just create these incredible big canvases. And, it's all technology, and it's there for us to use, and to make the most of it. So, don't allow yourself to settle too much in a way, or in a style, or use the opportunity, use what's at our disposal now, and you know do that in the best interest of the animals around us. That's a big thing for me, man.
So, Marlon, thank you so much for all your great insights you have given us. Now we have come to the last quick round of questions. I will ask
Yes,
you a quick question. You have to answer very
I'm
quickly.
excited. I'm ready.
Okay,
Bring it.
ready. So, starting with the first one, Sony Alpha 1 or Alpha 7R Mark IV?
Alpha One.
A trip to the Masai Mara or to Kruger National Park or to the Monopools?
Monopools.
100 to 400 lens or a 200 to 600 lens?
Whew. 100, 400.
A camera with an image stabilization or a camera with an animal eye autofocus?
Oh, that's a sneaky one. Animal eye autofocus.
A shot for a silverback gorilla or a shot for an alpha male lion?
Alpha male line.
Choose one app only that you will stay with for the rest of your life.
Oh, this is a tough one. Instagram. No, I don't. Uh,
So
Lightroom
choose
for editing.
Lightroom or Instagram. You have to choose.
Yeah, Instagram. There we go, man. I'll just
Okay.
do iPhone videos on my Instagram.
Okay. So choose one setting only on the camera that you can change while on a shoot.
One setting. Shutter speed.
Okay. So if you were not a photographer, you would be.
A wildlife veterinarian.
Wow. I thought you would tell me a guide, but you're already a guide. So
Yeah, done that. Been there, done that.
okay. So what else we have? Yeah, that's a good one. So Lightroom or Capture One,
Lightroom.
Prime or Zoom.
Prime.
So Marlon, if you wear a lens, which lens would you be and why?
400 f2.8, because there's just no other lens to be.
That's your favorite lens. It seems.
I've been using it for 10 years, man. That lens is it's good. It's a good lens. Versatile, very sharp at teleconverters, 400 f2.8, baby, and great in
Yeah.
low light.
So thank you, Marlon, so much for your time. Thank you for opening up so genuinely about your career, your life, your safari trips, and everything you shared with us. I hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as I did.
Oh, I loved it, man. I'll have my podcast up and running soon, and you're going to be one of the first guests. I'll be able to fire off some questions in your direction. But thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. It means a lot, man, and long overdue, as I said. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Marlon. Thank you, everyone, for following us. Please make sure you follow Marlon's work. He's on Instagram, he's on Facebook, and he should be launching a podcast and a YouTube channel very soon. So keep following him and also put it in your bucket list to have a safari trip with him. I already added it on my bucket list.
Thank
So
you. Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
So thank you, everyone, for your time. Please, if you like this episode, hit the like button and subscribe to wait for more coming episode with more and more Photopian photographers. Thank you and have a great day.